morning, everyone. Welcome to Danbury Hospital. We're going to be talking today about making decisions. What kind of decisions are healthy to make and what kinds of decisions are not healthy to make. My name is Mary Ronan. I'm a registered nurse with a clinical specialty in reproductive health. And we're going to be not just learning all the things that I know as a nurse, but I'm going to be teaching you what I've learned during the last 10 years visiting about 8,000 students your age every year. And I'm going to share with you some of the things that they've taught me, as well as some of the things that I know just from being a nurse. And one of the things that we're going to be taking a real close look at today is how do the TV shows we like, the movies we watch, the video games we play, how do all of those things influence how we make decisions? And they do. It's hard to imagine, but they really do affect how we decide for ourselves what we will and will not be doing. If your favorite television shows and your favorite movies have lots of characters that are really sexually active on them, it's easy to imagine that everybody's having sex. Seems like it's something everybody does. Well, it's not something everybody does, but we get the feel of that from the movies and the television programs that we enjoy and we watch. So what popular culture does to us is it does something that's called erosion. Has anybody ever been to the beach? Raise your hand if you've ever been to the beach. Okay, so let's make a pretend journey today. We all came here this morning for this exciting day, and when we got here, we decided we weren't going to videotape. What we were going to do was get on the bus and go to Myrtle Beach. Okay? So we all showed up here this morning at Danbury Hospital, and instead of getting off your school buses and coming into the building, we got off your school buses, got on coach buses, and off we go to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And we spent a week there. We had the best time ever. The weather was fabulous. We swam every day. We played lots of miniature golf. We really had a lot of fun. And while we were there, every single day, waves came up on the shore, took a few little grains of sand, and then went back out to the ocean. And we never noticed this happen. We just were noticing what a great time we were having. So we spent a whole week there, and then got on the buses and came home. And because we had such a good time, we decided that in 10 years, we're going to have a reunion in Myrtle Beach. So you guys all went and grew up, did all your growing up, went to college, got your jobs. I raised my kids. We met back here 10 years from now, got on the bus, and headed down to Myrtle Beach. Now, in the 10 years that we were away, no one did anything to save the beach. And all day, every day, waves were coming up on the beach and taking away sand. All day. And no one protected the dunes. Nobody planted the grass on the beach. No one did anything to save the beach. And 10 years went by. And we get on the bus and we drive down to Myrtle Beach, and when we get there, the beach is completely different. It's totally changed from the way it was before. It's not nearly as nice. It's narrower. So much of the beach is missing. And we say, what happened to our beach, this great beach? Well, what happened to our beach was erosion. And erosion happens when every single day a little bit of land gets taken away. And that's what television and movies and music do to us. We start off as babies being raised up by our families with very specific ideas about what kind of grown-up are you going to be, what sort of adult are you going to be. And as you watch lots of movies and you watch lots of TV programs and you listen to lots of music, that gets changed the same way the beach gets changed by the waves. The more you watch, the harder it is to make good decisions. Now, am I saying to you, don't ever watch TV, don't ever watch movies, it's bad, it's evil, you're not supposed to do it? No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is watch carefully. Pick what you watch. You know, movies that are rated R are marketed to you guys. Movies that are meant for someone who's 17 is marketed to 14-year-olds. and it puts thoughts in your brains that you never would have had if you weren't sitting in that theater that night. I worry about how those thoughts are going to change the decisions that you make, because when you watch TV and when you watch the movies and people make bad choices, they don't suffer from them. They come back to life on those video games. No one catches HIV on Friends. But in real life, those are the things that occur. In real life, those are the changes that will happen for you. And those are the issues that we're going to be taking a look at today. I'm going to be asking you some questions, and I'm going to ask you to raise your hand when you have an answer. And the first thing that we're going to be talking about today is, how do you make a decision? The first thing we want to take a look at is, what's the difference between a good decision and a bad decision? Okay? So, who knows? Who knows the difference between a good decision and a bad decision?
A good decision will help you.
Okay, so good will help, and bad will hurt. Very.
Theoretically, a good decision is kind of morally correct.
Okay. How would you know it was morally correct?
Comparing the two choices.
Okay, so we're going to say this is morally correct. And you have to look at the other decision also to do that? Sometimes. Okay. What else? What do you know?
Sometimes a good decision can seem not as fun or less entertaining than a bad decision.
So it might not feel right off the front like it's a good decision, huh? Okay. So it may be less fun. It actually the good decision may be, the bad decision may be what you want to do. Right? It's easy for that to happen. What do you think?
A bad decision is something you're probably not going to be able to tell your parents.
Oh, very good. Okay, so you'd have to, those are those secrets you wrote down, right? You'd have to keep a bad decision secret. It's hard to keep a secret from the people you eat dinner with every night, isn't it?
A bad decision will be more tempting.
Sometimes that's true, isn't it? Yeah. So a bad decision will be more tempting than a good decision. I think often that's true, especially with our subject that we're talking about today. We know that's the truth. What do you think?
A bad decision will catch up with you.
Okay, so a bad decision will eventually catch up with you, and you'll have an undesirable consequence. It'll catch up. Okay. What do you think?
Bad decisions can seem like good decisions.
It can, can't it? Sometimes it's really hard to know. You know, there's a word for that. A bad decision can seem like a good decision when you make it. There's a word that we use in faith circles when we talk about how do we know what God wants us to do. And the word we use then is called discernment. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about. How do you know? Sometimes it's very, very hard to tell. At your age, sometimes it's easiest to tell, well, if I do this, will I get in trouble or not? Eventually, you won't need to wonder about if you get in trouble. You'll just feel clearer about it yourself, whether it's right or wrong. But that discernment is really very, very tricky. And I think it's tricky. We all wonder about that. Even those of us that are adults in the room, sometimes we wonder, is this really what God wants me to be doing? What do you think?
Bad decisions are easier to make.
A bad decision is easier to make. Okay. Sometimes it doesn't feel like you're making a decision at all. You're just caught up in something, isn't it? You're with your friends, you're going along with something, and the next thing you know, you're doing something that you really don't think you should be doing. And you don't actually consciously feel like you've made the decision. This is very, very true in your teenage years when you go to parties and kids are drinking. This is very, very true when you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend and you start off kind of hugging and kissing and you like the way that feels. It's not like you're consciously making decisions to do what's wrong, but you're caught up in that. And what now is the time in your life to start doing is making the decisions, avoiding just getting caught up. How many of you have ever found yourself someplace where there's things going on and you're thinking to yourself, I maybe shouldn't be involved in this. This is maybe something I shouldn't be doing. How many of you found yourself in that situation? Wow, yeah, by 8th grade. Okay. How many of you have found yourself in that situation and you were able to get out of it? Oh, boy, that's really good. How many of you found yourself in that situation and you really couldn't quite get out of it? You thought you should, but it was too hard. Yep, very good. This is what happens. This is what's happening now. 8th grade is a big, big decision-making year. 8th grade and 9th grade. And one of the things that helps to make good decisions is practice at making good decisions. So when you practice making good decisions about the small things, all right? Let me give you a little example. You aren't in school today. You're here. So you probably got homework last night. And let's just pretend you did. You got some homework last night, and you had to have it done. Now, when you go back to school tomorrow, you're going to have an exam. And last night, you probably should have studied for this exam, but the phone rang, and it was someone you really like to talk to on the phone. Okay? Now, that's a simple good decision, bad decision. What would the good decision be? The phone rings, you're supposed to study for a test. What's the good decision?
Not to pick it up.
Not to pick it up, to do the studying, isn't it? Okay? What's the likely decision?
Keep talking.
You're going to keep talking. Okay. You know you ought to be putting down the phone and doing that studying, right? You know it, but somehow you just have to get those last few words of conversation in. And that kind of decision-making starts to establish a pattern for you. You make a habit of making good decisions or making bad decisions. If you consistently practice making decisions that take you in the wrong direction, they take you away from doing well, they take you into a place where you're going to have to keep secrets, they take you someplace where you might get hurt or you might experience a consequence, they take you someplace where it's going to catch up with you. I want you guys to know something. Your parents will always find out. I don't know how. I'm a parent myself. You always know. Somehow, someone tells you, you get the scoop, you find out what's going on, it's going to catch up with you. So if you started now, here we are at the beginning of 8th grade, if you started now practicing making small, good decisions. Okay? Say every morning in your household you have a big fight because you're running late for school. Okay? Every morning it's total chaos. You don't have your clothes ready. You didn't prepare yourself the night before. Everybody's yelling at each other as you're going out the door to get on the bus every morning. You hate that. It's a terrible way to start the day. So a good decision would be, why don't you set your alarm clock 15 minutes earlier and start getting dressed and stop having fights every morning. Okay? That's a good practice. Say you get to school every single day and you don't have your homework done. You're making some bad decisions, right? If you come to school every single day without your homework, that means every single night you're deciding not to do it. You want to start to change those decisions. And every night, sit down and start to do your homework. And you get powerful. You become stronger. Each good decision you make allows you to make another good decision. Decisions can take you in one of two directions. You can get on the right road, or you can get on the wrong road. That's it. There's two paths. Okay? There's a lot of little ways to go off either one of those roads, but you want to be on the road in the first place that's going to take you closer to your future instead of further away from it. You want a decision that's going to make more peace in your family instead of less peace in your family. You want to make a decision that's going to make your life run better for you instead of make your life more difficult for you. And there's 4 things to keep in mind to help you to make a good decision. The first thing is that your important decisions need to be made in advance. How many of you already know, yep, I'm going to college, no, I'm not going to college? How many of you already know that? Raise your hand. Okay, lots of you. Now, college is a solid 4 years away, 4.5 years away. And that's excellent forward thinking. I want to go to college. So if you know you want to go to college, you're going to make decisions about getting your homework done and doing your studying and working to get your grades. It's going to help you to make those decisions. None of you are going to decide to go to college the Labor Day after you graduate from high school. You're already going to know about college. You're going to know where you're going long before then. You're not going to decide who you're going to get married to the morning of your wedding. You're going to know that in advance. Your important decisions have to be made in advance, and the decision to be sexually active is a more important decision than the decision about where you go to college. It's a more important decision, and you're going to learn why today. Number 2 is that you need to be sure that you know how you feel. You understand your feelings. Your feelings really count. They're not something to ignore. They matter. They affect how you decide things. So if you know how you feel and you have that as a given, it makes it a little easier to make decisions. Because haven't we said that you're probably going to feel like you want to make the bad ones, right? Those seem like the easiest ones to make. You're going to feel like you're going to want to make the bad decisions, so you have to be able to recognize this. Now, when we're talking about the subject of sex, you need to know, how do you feel about this person who's your partner? Is this someone that you're going to be married to when you're 80 years old? Is this someone that you're going to have a home with and have babies with and raise a family with? Or is this someone that's really important to you and really special to you right now, but maybe not forever? Is this someone who you feel very close with as a 10th grader or an 11th grader, but maybe this isn't the person you're going to marry? Is this someone who's kind of popular and kind of cute, and being with them will get you in the right group, no matter how you feel? Or is this someone that you've had too much to drink, and they've had too much to drink, and you both just happen to be in the right place at the right time, and you don't have any feelings for them at all? You need to know how you feel. That's number 2. Number 3 is you need to understand that your feelings are not enough information. All your feelings tell you is how you feel. They don't tell you anything else. You need to know the facts. I'll give you a little college example of this. I have a son who's a senior in high school, and he's getting ready to go to college. And so we've spent the last year and a half looking at colleges. And something happens when we go to schools. When we drive onto the campus, Steve knows right away whether he likes the school or not, immediately. Some places we've gone onto the campus and we haven't even gotten out of the car. We've driven in, driven around the campus. We've gone to park the car, and he said, I don't like it here. So we don't even get out of the car. We just drive home. Other places we've gone to, we've driven onto the campus, and we've gotten onto the campus, and he's loved it. He loved the way it looked. He loved the kids. He loved everything he saw. That was how he felt. We would never want to send him to a college he didn't love any more than you would ever want to be sexually intimate with someone you didn't love. But we need to know, can Steve get in? Are his grades good enough? Are his SATs good enough? Can we afford to send him there? If we can't afford to send him there, can he get a scholarship? Do they offer his major? We need to gather our facts so that just loving the college is one part, but the fact that the college is good for him is the information that we have to have. And it's the same thing with you guys making the decision about sex. You have to know how you feel. But just knowing how you feel isn't going to tell you if you're making a good decision or not. So number 3 is gather your facts, and that's my job with you today. We're going to be gathering the facts. And number 4, and there are some places in this country where number 4 is as hard as it could possibly be. Number 4 is never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, change how you feel and then make an important decision like having sex. The reason people drink alcohol, the reason people use any substance at all is because those substances change how we feel. If they didn't do that, no one would use them. So if you go to a party and you have something to drink, if you go to a party and you use any other kind of substance at all, if you smoked a little weed or took some pills or did anything there, and then made a decision about having sex, you haven't made a decision at all. You made it at the last minute. You made it just based on your feelings, and you made it based on feelings that will change. You'll regret this decision. Now, one of the things to really remember about making decisions about sex is that the person who has the biggest regret is you. If you make a mistake, you carry this with you. You remember it. You can't sort of do whatever you want to in high school and then grow up and never think about high school again. The things you do in high school come with you into your adulthood. The things you do in high school influence decisions you make when you're a father, when you're a mother. The consequences of being sexually active come with you into your adulthood. And regret is something that can be kind of tough to live with, and you're the one that has it. So this is a decision that's yours. It's not anybody else's. It's yours to make. Don't find yourself caught up in it. Don't find yourself drifting into it. Think about it clearly. Know what you'll do. And I'm going to ask you to do that in a very specific way. Today is Tuesday. I am going to ask you to know before Sunday whether or not you are going to be a sexually active teenager. I want you to make the decision this week. And we're going to make the decision based on the stuff that we're going to be looking at today. I want you to make the decision when you have all your clothes on. I want you to make the decision when you're not with your boyfriend or your girlfriend. I want you to make the decision when you're totally clear-headed. And I want you to make this decision about you. This isn't a decision that you make about your partner. This is a decision that you make about you. Who are you? Are you a teenager who's going to be sexually active? Are you a teenager who's going to be able to wait? I want you to think about yourself, and I want you to think about what decision you need to make right now, this week, to help you stay on the good side of this instead of the bad side. So we're going to start, and we're going to start based on a promise. I can promise every single one of you in this room today that you're going to have the chance to have sex before you get married. You're going to have the chance. Actually, you're probably going to have the chance to have sex before you graduate from high school. Some of you are going to be so busy doing so many fun things. You got your sports going, you're doing theater, you're dancing and doing music and having such a great time for yourself. The chance is going to present itself to you, you're not even going to notice it. Others of you are going to be looking for that chance all the time. Every party you go to, every new girlfriend, every new boyfriend, you're thinking, oh, maybe this is it, maybe now's the time, right? Those of you that are always looking for the chance, the next 4 years are going to be kind of tough for you. Those of you that are really busy and having lots of fun and keeping the whole sex thing aside, the next 4 years are going to be a little easier for you, a little smoother for you. But the promise that we start with is that you're all going to have opportunity. Since we know you're going to have the chance, we need to start to think about what are you going to do. And since what we're going to do is gather the facts, the first thing I'd like for you guys to tell me is what kinds of problems do kids face who have the chance to have sex and they decide no? What kinds of problems do kids face when they choose not to be sexually active? What do you think?
Ridicule from your peers.
Ridicule from their peers. Peer ridicule, okay? What else?
You might feel awkward with your girlfriend.
Okay, so an awkwardness in the relationship. I'm probably going to spell awkward wrong. awkwardness in the relationship. What do you think?
Your partner might break up with you.
Breaking up. Okay. Okay. Anything else? What do you think?
Your partner may feel bad if they think that you're not ready. They might think that you don't love them.
Okay. You'd worry about that, your partner feeling that way? Okay. So you're going to have partner worries. Worry that your partner won't love you.
If an old boyfriend broke up with you because you said no, you might want to say yes this time.
Okay, so you might feel pressure. Very good.
You might tell his friends, and they might make fun of you.
Yeah, made fun of. Okay.
Might regret it and then go ahead and do it the next time.
Because you'd regret that you said no, and so you wouldn't think it through clearly the second time? Okay. I think regret is a natural human emotion. I want to talk about these a little bit. Does anyone have anything else we should write down here before we do that? You came up with a very complete list. This is very good. So you're going to worry about getting made fun of. Right? Now, we talk about peers. Peers, you guys, everyone in this room is each other's peer. Right? Every single one of you. Do you care what every single person in this room thinks about you? No, you don't. You don't care what all of your peer group thinks about you, right? Who do you care about? You care about what your friends think, don't you? The kids that are a little closest to you. Maybe not your very best friends, but maybe like that sort of next circle out. You know, your very best friends you can probably be yourself with, and they're going to accept you any way you are, hopefully. That's who your friends are. But that kind of next circle out of friends, not your most close, but that next group, those are the kids that drive us to impress them. Okay? And they drive us to impress them with things that maybe they're not even doing. But they're putting some pressure on us. Now, most of the places I go, the people who seem to experience the toughest pressure are the guys. The guys seem to put a lot of pressure on each other to be having sex. And in high school, my experience is such that your friends aren't going to put pressure on you to have sex by saying, oh, if you don't have sex, we're not going to be your friend anymore. That isn't how it's going to be. But you're going to have a friend or two who are having sex, or pretending they are anyways. You can't always believe what you hear. Okay? So you're going to come into school one morning, and your friends, one of your friends in your little circle of friends is going to be talking about the big weekend. Right? All the other boys that are listening to him talk feel like, why him and not me? That gives you pressure. It gives you pressure inside. It's not pressure that comes from outside. It's pressure that comes from inside and your desire to fit in. How you manage pressure is a very individual decision. But we each have to decide, now's the time, what will you do when you are in a situation where you feel pressure? Will you make a little joke? That's usually a pretty good thing to do. A joke is a great way to get rid of pressure. You make a little joke. You make a little fun. You do a little teasing. You make the situation light. You draw the attention away from you onto something else. Awkwardness and breaking up. I want to talk about those two together. Awkwardness will happen if you're not clear about the sort of person you are when you get involved with someone in a relationship. If you don't tell, if you're dating someone and you think that they're really terrific and they're really nice, and you're not talking to them at all about what's important to you, you're not talking to them about, you know, there's something I'd like you to know about me. I'm someone who's decided to wait until I'm married to have sex. I hope you will respect that. That's a conversation that you have over hamburgers or at McDonald's. Okay? That's a conversation that you have while you're taking a walk in the woods. That's a conversation that you have on the telephone with each other. That's not a conversation that you have when you're alone in your house and you're hugging and kissing. At that point, you're going to have to just say, hold on, hold on, hold on. We're doing something I'm not planning on doing. But if before you get to that hugging and kissing part, you say, I'm really someone who's taking this slow. I've made a decision for myself that's important to me, who I am, and I'm asking you to respect it. Then you don't get to the place where you get awkward. You don't get to the place where you have to slow things down because they're moving ahead too fast. You don't get to the place where you're really all of a sudden, I haven't thought this through and I have to decide no. That's why I want you to decide now. Because once you know, then you can express this to the people that you care about. And it gives you a couple of great dating advantages to not be sexually active. If you're not sexually active and you let the people you like know that you're not going to be sexually active right from the beginning, guess what? You're only going to date people who are willing not to be sexually active. That gives you a huge advantage over the long run. You're able to date someone who's able to look at their long view of their life instead of their short view. They're able to look at what it's going to be like when they get married and have a family instead of just what it's like today. That forward thinking is a very valuable trait to have in a wife or a husband. Most of the high schools I go to, when I ask the girls particularly, and I want you boys to be real aware of this, when I ask high school-aged girls how many of them would prefer to date boys who don't put pressure on them to have sex, every single girl raises her hand. So rather than you, as a young man, saying to your girlfriend, you know, I'm not going to put any pressure on you to have sex. This is something I'm not going to expect of you. I'm going to respect you more than that. Do you think she's going to feel less loved? Or do you think she's going to feel more loved? She's going to feel more loved. She's going to feel protected. She's going to feel respected. And she's going to feel as if she's with a guy who really knows how to treat a girl well. And that puts you boys in a great advantage. Because then you're with a girl who's going to treat you well too. And you're going to be able to develop a true relationship, not just a sex relationship. So, the problems you'll run into if you're not going to have sex, you worry about breakup, it's not likely to happen. You're more likely to break up in 6 months if you have sex. You're likely to break up in 2 years if you don't have sex. So you're much better off not being sexually active as far as the breakup is concerned. You can manage your partner worries. You can manage the awkwardness. And you want to decide what can you do about that pressure. What kind of little jokes can you make? How can you put things, how can you say things in a way that you're comfortable, and that relieves the pressure from you. So we're back, and we're talking about making decisions, and we're talking very specifically about the decision that you are at the place in your life right now to make, whether you will or will not be sexually active outside of marriage. And we started to talk about some of the problems that you might face should you choose not to be sexually active, that you might get made a little fun of, have some teasing that you have to deal with. You might feel awkward, but remember, you're going to talk about this with your partners so that in advance, so you avoid that awkward experience. Regret, frankly, you might have a little regret. You might think, gosh, that was my chance. I can promise you all, if you had one chance, you'll have more. Okay? It's not a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You might worry about your partner, but your partner's going to feel better cared for with your respectful approach to this than feel used with a disrespectful approach, and you might feel a little bit of internal pressure. So knowing that those might be some experiences that you have, some feelings that you have, or worries that you have if you're choosing to wait to have sex, let's talk about some of the experiences and some of the worries that kids might have if they choose to have sex. What kinds of things do those kids have to worry about? What do you have to worry about if you're being sexually active?
Reputation.
A reputation. And do you think that boys have to worry about their reputation too? Do boys and girls both have to worry about their reputation? What do you think?
I think girls kind of have to.
Girls have to worry about it more than boys. The old double standard is alive and well, you guys. The fact of the matter is that girls are more likely to experience harm to their reputation than boys are if they're sexually active. Should we think of this as fair? No. Should we think of this that, well, maybe then girls should be able to be sexually active and not get a reputation? No. That's mixed up. The way it should be is that you boys get a bad reputation if you're sexually active too. It shouldn't just be girls, because if you boys are players, you're a bad boyfriend. You're not going to make a good boyfriend. So boys, you should worry more about your reputation than you do. What else do you have to worry about? HIV. Do you know what HIV is? What kind of disease? Okay, HIV causes AIDS, but there's 3 little letters I'm looking for. STDs. You have to worry about STDs. And the first one we'll put on the list is HIV that causes AIDS. Now, this is a really cool thing, you guys. When I was growing up, we called these diseases venereal diseases. What did that tell us? Nothing. We didn't know anything. But for you guys, 3 little letters, sexually transmitted diseases. That means these are diseases that are transmitted by sex. That means if you don't have sex, you don't transmit these diseases. It actually tells you everything you need to know about them in 3 little letters. We're going to only talk about 8 of the most common sexually transmitted diseases. There are 52 of them. But we are only going to talk about the 8 that are most common amongst teenagers today. Okay, what else do we have? Who else has their hands up? Pregnancy. That's another one. We'll put that on a whole nother list here. That deserves a page all to itself. Pregnancy. Okay, what else?
Herpes.
Herpes is one of the sexually transmitted diseases, genital herpes. Okay, what else?
Safe sex.
You have to think about safe sex. And do you imagine really in your heart of hearts that there's such a thing as safe sex? No. You know what? I'm going to tell you there is. There's absolutely such a thing as safe sex. It's married sex. Sex between 2 people that are married to each other. Sex between 2 people who chose to wait for one another to have this level of intimacy in their life is the only safe sex there is. Outside of its context of marriage, sex cannot be safe. It's not where it's supposed to take place. If we talk about safe sex and we just talk about protecting your physical body, when we talk about these diseases, you're going to see we can't do that. Say there's no way you can protect your physical body against some of these diseases. But we also have to think about our spiritual self. Can we protect our spiritual self if we're choosing to be sexually active outside of marriage? We can't. We've made a decision to put that at risk. Can we protect our emotional self if we make the decision to be sexually active outside of marriage? We can't. We put our emotional self at risk. So safe sex is sex in the context in which it was meant to be. And that's between 2 married people. Notice, I didn't say engaged. I didn't say in love. I didn't say hot for each other. I said married, married, married. That's when it's safe. Okay, what else do you have to think about if you're having sex? What do you think?
You're going to regret it.
Regret. That regret is going to rear its head for sure.
What if your parents find out?
Oh, you got to worry about the parents. As a parent, I can tell you, you have to worry about us, okay? We don't want you having sex. We don't want you putting your life in this sort of peril. We don't want you making decisions that are going to distract from your future. We care about where you're headed. We love you enough to die for you. We want to be sure you don't harm yourself along the way. Parents are not pleased when their children are sexually active. It's not good news for moms and dads. What else do you have to think about?
Genital warts.
Genital warts. HPV is the virus, Genital warts are the symptoms. Let's see if we can name any other sexually transmitted diseases, if you know the names.
Syphilis.
Syphilis, very good. It's not a very good disease. It's just good you knew. Okay, hold on. Let me flip my page here. What else?
Gonorrhea.
Gonorrhea. What else?
Hepatitis B.
Hepatitis B, very good. Hepatitis B is the one on the list that you can catch by mistake. I'll put B and C there. This is the one, there's only going to be 2 of them on the list that you can get in ways other than sexual contact, and hepatitis B is one of them. You should be vaccinated against hepatitis B. I would imagine that by 8th grade, you all have received this 3-shot series of vaccinations that protects you from hepatitis B. And the reason you need that is not because we believe you're going to be sexually active, but because you can catch hepatitis B from contaminated food and water. So it's easy to pick this up without any effort at all. And fortunately, this is the one we have the vaccine for. So you should be sure that you're vaccinated against that. And then that doesn't give you license to go ahead and be sexually active, but it protects you when you go, when you eat out, when you go to the ice cream store, when you go to another school to play a football game or a basketball game, that sort of thing. So you want to be sure that you have your vaccination. What else? What other sexually transmitted diseases do you know? Do you know any of them? What do you think?
Chlamydia.
Chlamydia, very good. Okay, so we have HPV, we have chlamydia, we have genital herpes, we have HIV, we have hepatitis B and C. We need a few more. We have syphilis, gonorrhea. It's really just one, and it's bugs. You guys call it something that's at the beach. You want, what is that? What do you think it might be? Crabs, that's right, crabs. He was right on, except the real word for crabs are pubic lice. Okay? Yeah. They're gross. They're bugs. Okay. So let's go back here to the beginning, and we're going to talk about these in order of frequency of their occurrence, and HPV is number 1. In teenagers. And I'll tell you a little funny story that happened yesterday. Yesterday when we were in this room and getting all ready for today, there was a lot of doctors that were coming in here yesterday afternoon, and they were doctors who specialized in obstetrics. And they got into a conversation with one of the gentlemen that was working here and said, you better be sure that that Mary Ronan knows about HPV. And this is a doctor here at the hospital. He wanted to be sure that I told you guys about HPV because he sees so much of it. This is such a common sexually transmitted disease that 1 out of every 3 sexually active teenagers will acquire this virus over the course of their sexual activity. And I say this virus for a reason. HPV, the V, means virus. Human is the H, that's us. We're the only ones that get it. Papilloma means wart. The wart is the symptom. The disease isn't genital warts. The symptom is genital warts. And the V means virus. Now, a virus is a particular problem because there is no treatment. There is no cure. Once you acquire a virus, you will have it for the rest of your life, forever. This virus will be in your body. And in the case of HPV, this is a virus in women's bodies that causes cancer. It is the cause of cervical cancer in women today. They used to say it was a cause of cervical cancer, that it was one of many causes. Then they found that more than half of cervical cancers were caused by HPV. Last year, the most recent study that came out, more than 90% of cervical cancer is caused by this sexually transmitted disease. That means it's 100% preventable. Condoms do nothing to stop the spread of this virus. This virus is in the pores of the genital skin. So when there's skin-to-skin genital contact, this virus can be spread if one partner has the virus. Condoms do not cover enough skin to protect you against the spread of this disease. We see girls who are sophomores and juniors in high school who have cancer already from this one sexually transmitted disease. Actually, in every high school I go to, I meet at least 1 or 2 girls every year that has gone through treatment for cancer as a result of this virus. This virus is spread through intercourse. This virus is spread through oral sex. With oral sex, if you get this virus, the warts are going to grow in your throat and in your mouth. This is an unpleasant disease. Now, the problem, other than that it's a virus, is that it is symptomless. When we call this disease genital warts, we're not telling you guys the truth, because the warts are the symptoms that very few people get during their teenage years. You may get the warts when you're in your 20s or in your 30s from a virus that you picked up when you were 15 or 16 years old. And the only way you can get this is through sexual contact. If you acquire this virus, your children will acquire this virus. If you are a young man and you acquire this virus, you're going to give it to your wife. You will give it to her. She will end up with this virus. Your children will pick this virus up as they're being born. When a baby picks a virus up from the mother's reproductive tract as it's being born, the symptoms of the virus end up in their lungs. So babies that are born to mothers who have HPV, down the road when they're 10, 11, or 12 years old, they grow warts in their lungs. That gives them asthma. Anybody have asthma in here? Yeah, huh? Did you ever have an asthma attack and not have your inhaler with you? You had that? Was it scary? Yeah, because you just can't breathe, can you? You just can't breathe. That's how these kids feel. When the warts are in their lungs, they feel just the way you feel during an asthma attack with no inhaler. You can't breathe. You can't fill those lungs up with air. And an inhaler doesn't make it go away. They need to have a laser that goes down into their lungs to kill the warts in order for them to be able to breathe clearly again. This is a disease you've got to not catch. And this is a disease you're most likely to catch if you're choosing to be sexually active during your teenage years. Okay? Our second most common sexually transmitted disease is chlamydia. This is number 2. 1 out of every 4 sexually active teenagers will acquire chlamydia. Chlamydia is the number 1 cause of infertility in this country today. That means you want to have a baby and you can't get pregnant. And I'm going to show you first how chlamydia affects women, and then we'll talk about what it does to men. Chlamydia is treatable. It's treatable actually fairly easily with 2 doses of an antibiotic. But like HPV, it has no symptoms. So you don't know you have it. If you don't know you have something, you don't go to get it treated. And that's what happens to girls with chlamydia. Now this is a giant uterus. It's going to look like an alien. Shouldn't let that alarm you at all. Okay. Okay. This is the uterus here. These 2 on either side are the fallopian tubes. There's 2 of those. Okay. There's also 2 ovaries. That's where the eggs are. This is the cervix. This is the part of the woman's body that gets the cancer from the HPV. And this is a really important part of a woman's reproductive tract because the baby grows inside the uterus. So in order for the baby to be born down the vagina, the cervix has to open all the way up in order for the baby to make their pathway down. If the cervix has cancer, it can't do that because they remove the cancer with these little cone shapes like that. And it makes it less possible, less likely for the cervix to be able to open up as in order for the baby to come down and to be born. Now, when a baby girl is born, she's born with all of her eggs already in her ovaries. We have our eggs our whole lives. You guys don't start making your half of the babies, the sperm, until you reach puberty, and then you make sperm every single day, but for the rest of your life. But girls are born with all of their eggs. When a girl reaches puberty, once a month, one ovary or the other will release an egg. Now, I want you to bear with me on this. Imagine that my body is a giant uterus. My arms are the fallopian tubes, okay? The fallopian tubes have fingers on them, just like my arms do, except they're not bony. They're soft, like the end of your nose or your earlobe. Right? Now, all the time in a woman's body, her fallopian tubes are going like this. All the time. Okay? Well, 100% of the time. And when that woman reaches puberty, one ovary or the other is going to release an egg, and the fingers of the fallopian tube capture the egg, and the movement of the fallopian tube propels the egg into the middle of the tube. Now, let me give you a little size perspective on this. The uterus is the size of a walnut. The fallopian tubes are the width of 3 strands of hair, and 50 eggs fit on the head of a pin. Okay, just to give you a little size perspective. So this woman ovulated. Her egg is in her tube, and she has intercourse with her husband. Her husband releases, about 300 million sperm. All right. Little swimmers, like this here. In 2 tablespoons of semen, and the semen is the food that keeps the sperm alive for its trip to the egg, okay? And the sperm heads down to the tube to the egg, and the egg just sits there. And she is waiting for Mr. Right. She's going to wait there, and these 300 million guys are going to come, and they're going to start knocking against her like this. I want to be the baby. I want to be the baby. They're knocking on the door, and she just sits. She lets all those guys bang against her, and she just waits. She's going to choose one sperm. She's not going to pick the sperm that's the most popular with his friends. She's not going to pick the one with the nicest shaped head or the longest tail. She's going to pick the one sperm that's making a permanent commitment for life. For life. Girls, we need to be as smart as our eggs. Okay? God planned this like this. One sperm, one egg, one baby. Sometimes 2, if you have identical twins. Okay? One sperm, one egg. Never, ever, ever more than 1. If she lets in more than 1, they all die. She dies and the sperm. If she lets 1 in and closes back up, then they start dividing right away, and they travel down into the uterus. In the uterus, the fertilized egg is going to bump around inside the uterus to find the place with the most blood vessels to implant to grow into the baby. So it's going to bump around in there to find a place that has a lot of nice blood vessels. When it finds all those blood vessels, it's going to implant itself right into the wall of the uterus, and the baby is going to continue to develop into a full-size baby. That takes about 40 weeks. Now, if this woman had intercourse with someone who had chlamydia, instead of that being a life-giving experience where you get to have a baby as a result of it, the chlamydia enters the woman's body, and it makes scars happen all the way around the inside of the uterus like this. All the way around. There's no place for the baby to implant. The baby cannot implant to grow into the baby. When the scar is done on the uterus, the chlamydia comes out the fallopian tube and makes scars happen there. There's no place for the egg to go to be fertilized. This is an infertility that is not fixable. It cannot be fixed. Their drugs can't fix this. In vitro fertilization can't fix this, where they make the baby in the dish and put it in the mother. Artificial insemination can't fix this. This is permanent, irreversible infertility. And chlamydia is what causes it. Chlamydia is our 2nd most common sexually transmitted disease. It has no symptoms, and condoms will not stop the spread of this disease. Now, something different happens for boys with chlamydia than for girls, and I want to tell you about that. What can happen for boys who have chlamydia, like girls, you're symptomless. This germ enters into your body. It travels your reproductive tract, which is tubes. You've got a lot of tubes in there, guys. And it travels the tube all the way into your testicles to a place in your testicles called the epididymis. And this is where chlamydia likes to be in a man's body. So this chlamydia goes into this epididymis, and it lives there. And it likes it so much that it colonizes. It makes more and more and more of it. And years go by, and you have no idea this is going on. None at all. And one night, you go to bed, and you go to sleep, and you check everything out, and it looks pretty good. And you hop into bed, and you go to sleep, and you sleep all night long. And when you wake up in the morning, you have giant testicles. They are the size, the shape, and the weight of grapefruits. So, let's face it, guys. This is an unusual experience. They are very hot. They are bright red. They are very painful. And what you know for sure is you're not getting out of bed. So you have to say, Mom, I have giant testicles. And your mom comes into your room and she says to you, honey, what did you say? You say, Mom, I went to bed last night. Everything was fine. I woke up this morning. I got grapefruits. And your mother says to you, I better take a look at that. Well, you are so scared, you show her. And she says, my poor sweet son, you do have giant testicles. We better take you to the doctors. And you put on your biggest, baggiest pants. You carefully make your way to the car. You sit very gingerly in the car. You get into the doctor, and the doctor says, son, I have some good news, and I have some bad news. The good news is that what you have is called epididymitis. And that's caused by either chlamydia or gonorrhea. Both are curable diseases. That's the good news. The bad news is we have to know which germ it is in order to be able to treat it. So he turns around and he opens a little drawer behind him. And when he turns back to you, he has in his hands a Q-tip that's this big. Okay? Probably enough said about that. I don't need to go into any more of the gory details. You can imagine. That's chlamydia. Okay? Number 3 is genital herpes. A virus like HPV, not curable. Once you have genital herpes, you'll have it for the rest of your life. It gives you cold sores on your genitals are the symptom. If you are a young woman and you acquire genital herpes, you will need to have your babies by cesarean section, because babies that are born down a vaginal canal where the herpes virus is present get herpes in their lungs, and that's a fatal disease for babies. So they deliver babies of women who have active herpes by cesarean section to protect your baby. That's our 3rd most common sexually transmitted disease. Our 4th is HIV. I think you probably know enough about HIV that I don't have to go into a lot of details about it. Let's suffice it to say HIV, as it stands today, is a deadly disease. It is a disease that will end your life in a way that is generally undesirable. It is you're sick for a long time. You lose your vision. Cytomegalovirus gives you chronic, unrelenting diarrhea, sometimes 30 times a day. You may have tumors that grow in your brain and in your spine. It's a disease that takes your life a little bit at a time, and it's a disease that not a single person in this room ever needs to have. Gonorrhea and syphilis are curable. You are most likely to acquire those if your sex partner is older than you are, even just by a little bit. They are both curable. Gonorrhea does what chlamydia does, but men have symptoms. Men get a pustulent, purulent, penile discharge, and what that means is thick green pussy stuff comes out of the end of your penis. You know there's something wrong, okay? And you go to the doctor because you have this stuff. It smells bad. The guys that I've worked with that have had gonorrhea describe the experience of going to the bathroom as peeing fire. That's what they call it. You know, you go to the doctor can treat you, but he's also going to want a list of your sex partners. so that your sex partners can find out that they've gotten this terrible disease from you. And it's the same with syphilis. Syphilis is the one they do the blood test for when you get married. Syphilis is fatal but curable. So they need to know that you have it. So they test everybody when they get married for syphilis. They test you when you're pregnant for syphilis. And again, if you test positive, you have to tell them who your sex partners are so they can warn your sex partners that they have this disease as well. Hepatitis B and C we talked about. And pubic lice. Pubic lice are little bugs that make you itch. And you're itching, and you're itching, and you're itching, and you're itching. And you take a look, and you see them. They're moving around. Now, the problem with pubic lice is that you leave them places. If you slept over at a friend's house, you're going to have to call your friend up and say, oh, gee, I left something at your house. You better check your bed for bugs. Okay? If you loan someone your clothes or if you borrow someone else's clothes, you could end up very easily with pubic lice. It's the only one, other than hepatitis, on the list that you can catch without actually having sexual contact. So these are the diseases that we'll have to focus on if you're worried, if you're choosing to be sexually active. Okay, so we've been talking about the problems you might face if you choose not to be sexually active. And we talked about having some peer pressure and a little awkwardness. You might experience some regret. You might worry about your partner. You might experience some pressure. Those are the things that you probably will have some experience with. If you're choosing to wait, you'll have to think it through. You'll have to plan how you're going to talk to people. We started to talk about some of the problems you might expect to experience if you're choosing to be sexually active. Your reputation, regret, your parents. Those are definitely three things you have to worry about. You have to worry about HPV. You need to worry about chlamydia and genital herpes and HIV. You need to worry about gonorrhea. You need to worry about syphilis and hepatitis B and C and pubic lice. That's one category of concern that you'll have to have on your mind. We know that when we talked initially about something called safe sex, we've already learned how unsafe physically that is. Our two most common diseases are not stopped from the use of condoms and from other forms of birth control other than condoms do nothing against sexually transmitted disease, nothing at all. So what we know for sure, just clinically speaking about these diseases, you cannot possibly protect yourself from a bad decision with something outside of you. The only way you can protect yourself is by making good choices in the first place. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is what happens if you make a baby. What kinds of problems do you face as a teenager if pregnancy becomes a part of your life? Let's talk. There's two ways I want to take this. I'd like for you to tell me what do you think would be different about your life, and then we're going to take a look at how much it costs. What do you think?
You'll have a hard time finishing school.
School. It's very, very hard to finish school. 70% of teenage mothers find that they cannot finish school. What do you think?
You might have to decide to marry the father.
Oh, yeah. Well, can I take that a little step further? She said we have to make the decision about getting married. In the 2000s, in the new century, and in the 1990s, very few teenagers make that choice to get married if they become pregnant. Most teenage parents will be a single parent. You'll be raising your baby alone. And I want to make a comment about this. I worked with a group of teenagers for several years, a support group for teenage parents. And some of the kids that came to the support group were moms, and some of the kids that came to the support group were dads. And the thing that struck me very, very strongly during this support group was how angry the young mothers and the young fathers were at each other. They were mad. And all we would have to do is mention the other parent's name, and their face would get bright red, and they would get all mad like this. They were so distressed, so distraught, that they shared this experience, made this baby. Now they're on their own. Not only are they not supportive of each other, but they spend more time in court than they spend in school, about child support, about child care, about who has custody, about who gets to see the child. They knew their lawyers on first-name basis. They were friends with their lawyers. They spend so much time with them. So instead of being able to focus on the things about being a kid, they had to focus on things about being an adult, and it wasn't a happy experience for them. What else do you have to worry about if you have a baby?
Won't get to play sports.
Extracurricular activities. That would be sports, music, student council. All of that stuff ends. What else?
You have to decide if you want to keep the baby.
Okay. So you have to make a decision about raising the baby without money, without experience, without maturity.
Your social life?
Your social life. Over. Nobody says to you, oh, gee, could you and the baby come to the prom? You know, that isn't what happens.
How do you decide if you want to have an abortion?
Oh, you have to worry about abortion, and that's a big thing. So we talked, one of the things you have to worry about is raising the baby. One of the things you have to worry about is adoption. Is abortion, and I just gave you the answer. There's a third one, and it's adoption. Okay? Those are your three choices once the baby's growing in there. But I can give you total assurance that once the baby's growing in there, your life will never be the same. Never. And if you choose to raise the baby, you have an uphill struggle, raising up a baby all by yourself, without the skill, without the resources to do it. Abortion very, very often seems like an easy answer, and it's not. Abortion is a terrible, terrible consequence of teenage pregnancy. It's a terrible consequence. And it is a consequence, obviously, for the baby who loses their life. The baby loses their life in abortion. It is a terrible consequence for the mother who makes the choice to have an abortion, because I'm going to tell you what happens to these girls. They're in a panic. They never in a million years imagined that what they're doing with their boyfriend is going to make them pregnant. Never crossed their mind. They think that being pregnant will not happen to them, and they miss their period. They panic. What's going to happen? How are they going to tell their parents? How are they going to tell their boyfriend? How are they going to go to school? It's the worst thing. So maybe she talks to her friend, and her friend says to her, you can have an abortion. You don't have to have this baby. And then maybe she goes through the phone book, and instead of calling someone like Birthright, who's going to say, let us help you to have this baby, she's going to call the places that say they do abortions. And what those places are going to say to this young girl is they're not going to talk to her about her baby. They're going to talk to her about her choice. That's what we call abortion in this country, is a choice. We don't call it a baby. So they're going to talk to this girl about her choice. And she's not going to talk to her boyfriend. She's too afraid. She's not going to talk to her mom and dad. She's too afraid. She's going to be talking to people who are going to use the word choice instead of baby. And she makes the decision that this choice to have an abortion is hers. She goes to the place where they do it. They talk to her about her choice, about her life, about her future. And it isn't until it's all over that in her mind, that choice becomes her baby, when it's too late to do anything about it. I have never met a teenage girl who's chosen to have an abortion who hasn't had bad dreams for a long time afterwards. I have never met a teenage girl who's chosen to have an abortion who isn't tormented by that decision years later. When you watch TV, when you watch the news, when you read the magazines, it seems like it's like going out for dinner. And that's not what it's like at all. It's a terrible tragedy. It doesn't solve the problem of the pregnancy. It ends the pregnancy and gives you a whole brand new set of troubles. This is a terrible choice. And by the way, boys, I have to tell you, you are in a particularly tough situation on this with the abortion question because you made this baby. Scripture tells us that God knows us before we're even in our mother's womb. Right? So you made this baby. You decided as a young man that the risk of making your girlfriend pregnant wasn't so bad that you'd go ahead and have intercourse with her. You made a baby at a time where you couldn't support that baby, where you can't marry that baby's mother, where you can't father that baby. You made that choice. Your girlfriend can choose to abort that baby without ever telling you. You could never know she was pregnant, and she could have an abortion. And you are morally responsible for the life of that child. And then the other option, besides raising your baby, ending the pregnancy, is releasing your baby to adoption. Mary Ronan's opinion is that this is the best thing a teenager can do. That's my opinion. If you find yourself in this situation, now I know none of you guys are going to find yourself in this situation because you're here today and you're making good decisions, but if a young woman finds herself in a situation where she's going to be having a baby and she has to decide between ending that baby's life with abortion or allowing a family that is going to love that baby well to raise that baby up, what do you think the better choice is? If you were the baby, which would you pick? Okay? You'd pick adoption. No, wouldn't even think about it. You'd say, Mom, release me to a family that can take care of me. That's what you'd say if you were the baby. Your baby doesn't have that say. So you have to be careful that you can say it for them. Sadly, very few teenage girls do release their babies for adoption. Very, very few. I would like to see a lot more of that happen than it is. All right, what else do you have to worry about? What do you have to worry about?
Miscarriage.
Yeah? You have to worry. So can we say the mother's health? Can we worry about that? Give it that the full thing? We'll worry about mom's health. Your bodies are really growing a lot during your teenage years. And to grow a baby, which is 100 million billion cells in 40 weeks, to grow that baby is a lot for your body to do. What do you think?
Your friend might try to exclude you.
Oh, yeah, your friends. All these friends that were giving you such a hard time about having sex or not, the minute you get pregnant, it's over for you. They're not going to be hanging around with you. They're not going to help you with any of this. And your friends are not going to make your life any easier or nicer for you. What do you think?
Become more dependent on parents.
Yeah, that's right. So at a time when you're wanting to become independent, you actually have to become even more dependent. Okay? What else? What do you think?
Being role model for younger kids.
What a great point this is. She said being a role model for younger kids. You're going to give them the wrong impression. That's the truth. The older you get, the more other kids are looking up to you. And if you have kids in your family, little siblings, kids in the neighborhood, your role model ability is really changed. But excellent point. Very good. What do you think?
Pregnancy can hurt your body.
Yes, it does. It actually does. It's not good for your body. When your body's still growing, it's not good for your body.
You could get in trouble for having sex with someone younger than yourself.
This is another very important point. The whole issue of statutory rape. If there's a 3-year age difference between sex partners, the older partner is breaking the law. If one sex partner is under 17 and one sex partner is over 17, the person who's over 17 is breaking the law. And this used to be a law you could break and sort of get away with and never have any problems. But certainly here in this part of the country, this is a law that they are taking very, very seriously. And I don't know if any of you saw the newspaper over the weekend, and on the front page of the newspaper they had all these pictures of all these men who are sex offenders. And I wondered how many of them, their offense was statutory rape. And now statutory rape means they had sex with someone who was too young. Okay? That doesn't mean it can be consensual sex. This can be your girlfriend who's 2 years older than you. This can be a person you love a lot who's 3 years older than you. But if you're a minor, they're breaking the law. And they're breaking the law, and your parents can press charges. It gets even more complicated than that for you young men, because if she becomes pregnant and she has a baby, you are financially responsible for that baby. If she needs to get federal money, if she needs to go on welfare, if she needs food stamps, if she needs to take, if her child's health care needs to be paid for by Medicaid, if any of that has to happen, you as the father are financially responsible for that. And I'll tell you a little story about this. An attorney that I know was telling me this story. She thought it would be helpful for you to know. She had a client who lived out of state, who owned 2 homes. He owned a home out of state, and he owned a home in Darien, which, as you know, is a pretty ritzy community. So he had a house in Darien, and he had a child. He fathered a child as a teenager. He was paying child support to this child. He wasn't in this child's life. This child was now 18. He was paying child support and fulfilling what he believed were his economic responsibilities to this child, and he and his wife decided to sell their house. They put their house on the market, and they had an offer on their house in Darien, and when they went to go through all the legal things about the offer being accepted, the person who made the offer found out that there was a lien on the house. Now, a lien on the house means you owe money to someone, and you can't sell your house until you pay that money back. So they were very surprised by this lien on the house. It was for $60,000 was the lien. They were very surprised by the lien on the house. They started to investigate it. And what this $60,000 was, it was owed to the state. This man owed $60,000 to the government because his child had $60,000 worth of health care that was paid for by the government, not for him. So before he could sell his house, now he's got a wife, he's got other kids. This was, in his mind, a mistake he made as a teenager. Imagine the sadness in that child's heart. This was a mistake that he made as a teenager. And he has to write a check for $60,000 before he can sell his house because his child got health care. If you want a college loan, you can't get one. If you want to buy a car, you can't get financing. If you win a scholarship to college and you're a father who owes money, you can't get your scholarship. This will have an economic impact on you until this baby is 18 years old. And you created that by choosing to have sex. You have no say in the results, but you created that by choosing to have sex. So that's a very, very valuable point. What else? What do you think?
Your boyfriend might break up with you.
Yeah, this is a breakup for sure. We did some research on what makes kids break up. And we looked at about 3,000 kids and what made them break up and what didn't make them break up. We were actually looking to see if one partner choosing not to have sex caused a breakup. That was the study we were doing. And we found that no one in our 3,000 kid study broke up because one person didn't want to have sex and the other one did. We couldn't find a single kid who broke up over not having sex. We found a lot of kids who broke up because of a pregnancy. We found a lot of kids who broke up because one kid gave another a disease. We found a lot of kids who broke up because the stress of the sexual relationship was more than they could bear. We found a lot of kids who broke up because they cheated on each other. We didn't find anyone who broke up because one person didn't want to have sex and the other one did. This is a big reason for a breakup. Anything else we should put down? Your parents, yeah. You know, a lot of kids say to me, oh, if I had a baby, that's all right. My parents would help me, right? Well, I don't think so, you guys. I don't think so. Not that they don't love you dearly, not that they wouldn't want your life to go well and smoothly and easily, but you know what? Your parents don't want you to have sex. So you're going to turn around, you're going to say to your parents, I disobeyed you, and this is my problem. Fix this for me. As a parent, that wouldn't work in my house, okay? So I think that you want to be sure you don't get yourself in this situation. Kids say to me, oh, my mother would take care of the baby. How many of you have mothers that have a job? Your mom's going to quit their job to take care of your baby? I don't think that's going to happen. 70% of teenage parents have to leave their house. Their parents say to them, we love you, honey, come for dinner on Sunday, but this is your problem. Find yourself a place to live. So because you're parents, it's not that they're mad at you, it's just that you've made an adult decision and now you have to live with that consequence. You're going to have to find housing. Now, what I want to take a look at here is how much all of that will cost you, so that we have a real feel of the economic impact on that. But before I do that, I'm going to give you a little homework. Oh, I know, so mean. Okay? But what I want you to do is I want you to, at the dinner table with your family this week, remember you're making the decision about whether or not you're going to be sexually active this week. So you have to do this homework this week. I want you to say to your family at the dinner table, to your mom or your dad or who's ever at the table with you, what would happen in this house if I, as a young lady, or my girlfriend as a young man, became pregnant as a teenager? You got to ask that question, okay? Now, once you get the answer to that, let's make a list, a real quick list of what do you need to buy, what do you need to have money for if you're taking care of a baby, all the way in the back. Yep. Diapers. You can't do it without diapers. All right, what else do you need? I'm going to try and call on kids I haven't got yet. Clothes. For who? Yeah, mom doesn't get any clothes. The baby gets clothes. What else? Hospital bills. It costs $13,000 to have a baby. That's if everything goes well. Food. Should we get food for mom and dad or just for mom and baby? Mom and baby, okay, food. And we're only going to feed mom. And we're going to get formula for the baby because teenage moms don't tend to breastfeed. We wish they would, but they don't. A babysitter, childcare. You need full-time childcare. If you've got school and work and all of that, you got childcare. Okay, what else? Housing, very good. Housing. What else? A crib, furniture, right. Okay, what else do we need here? So you got legal, you need legal fees, okay. You better hope somebody's going to give you free legal help.
Well, the mother does need clothes, but she's like pregnant, maternity clothes.
Yeah, but you know what? You can't afford them. We can't put clothes in your budget because when you're a teenage mom, you can't afford clothes. You have to hope people give them to you. Isn't that something? One of the things that I see absolutely across the board with the teen moms that I work with is that they don't buy clothes for themselves. A mother that I've become friendly with, her child is now 4. She hasn't bought one brand new thing for herself to wear in 4 years. Now let me ask you guys this. How many of you have gotten something new to wear since school started? Okay. School started a month ago, not even a whole month ago. Okay. How many of you got something new to wear this weekend? Okay. How many of you could imagine going 5 years without a new outfit? Yeah, the boys raise their hands. There isn't a single girl hand up. Okay. Let's just take a look at what we're going to spend here. Diapers cost $150 a week. Yeah, a month, I'm sorry, a month. Formula costs $150 a month. Clothes, since your baby grows out of their clothes every 6 weeks, I'm going to give you $50 a month for clothes for the baby, okay? Now, the hospital bill, you can't afford $13,000. Your parents' insurance is not going to cover you, okay? It isn't going to cover you. So if you're not old enough to get a job where you get insurance, and for most jobs, you need to work at least 30 hours a week to get insurance, and here you are trying to go to school. You're not going to have a method for paying this $13,000 hospital bill. So you're going to make a deal with the hospital. I'll give you $100. I'll give you $100 a month. But on top of that, you have a baby. Your baby, once a month for 6 months, has to go to the doctor when they're healthy. And each of those visits costs at least $100. So even if we give you just $100 a month for doctor bills, the doctor bills keep piling up and piling up and piling up, and you owe more money than you ever imagined you would owe. We're going to spend $300 a month on food for Mom. If we're feeding Dad also, we have to more than double that because you teenage boys eat so much. But for moms, this is like includes paper towels, toothpaste, all of that kind of stuff, okay? Child care costs $225 a week for an infant. That's $900 a month for child care. Housing. If you want to live inner city, 1 bedroom, inner city, $600 a month, 1 bedroom, $600, okay? And that does not include heat, light, water, sewer, or anything like that. That's your utilities. And that's going to be another $300 a month. So your housing alone is going to cost nearly $1,000 a month, all right? So let's just look at this. We have $300, $600, $700, $1,600, $2,200, $2,500, $2,550 a month for a baby, okay? How many of you have ever had a couple of $1,000s in your pocket? Okay. Oh, well, you're more fortunate than I am. I never have a couple $1,000s in my pocket. If you have a job and you work 40 hours a week and you make $7 an hour, that's $280 a week. By the time you take taxes and Social Security out of that, it's $200 a week. That's $800 a month is all you can earn. And $2,500 a month you have to spend. So pregnancy really makes things tough fast. It changes your life immediately. The minute you miss that period, your life is off course. And it's going to be now not just your own life you have to get back on track, but now you're responsible for somebody else's life too. Can you be ready for that when you're 15 or 16? No, I don't think so. Okay, so here we are, and we're talking about some of the problems you might face. First, if you choose not to be sexually active, you have to worry about getting teased by your friends and having your friends give you a hard time. You have to plan. How are you going to tell your boyfriends or girlfriends this wonderful news about you, that you're a respectful and responsible person? You're going to have to think ahead about that. You're going to maybe have some feelings like, oh gosh, maybe I should have. You might experience that inner doubt and have to work that through. Those are the problems you'll face if you're choosing to wait to have sex. The problems you'll face if you're choosing not to wait are written up here in red. And you can see you have to worry about your reputation. You have to worry about regret. This is serious regret. The regret that you have when you're deciding not to have sex, when you get married and you can have all the sex you want as often as you want, then you don't feel that regret anymore. But this regret, if you choose to have sex, that stays with you. That doesn't go anywhere. You have to worry about your parents. Seems like your parents keep popping up, don't they? They sure are. You have to worry about sexually transmitted disease, HPV, cervical cancer, chlamydia, infertility, genital herpes, and have the way you deliver your babies altered. You have to worry about HIV, which will make you very sick and eventually end your life. You have to worry about gonorrhea and syphilis, which certainly get you listed as someone who has sexually transmitted diseases. You need to worry about hepatitis? No, because you're vaccinated against that. And you need to worry about pubic lice. Condoms will not stop the spread of HPV or chlamydia at all. Condoms give you some protection against genital herpes. Condoms give you some protection against gonorrhea and syphilis. Condoms give you some protection against HIV, but certainly not enough protection so that you would feel that you could be sexually active and not have to risk this. You need to worry about making a baby. What are you going to do if that happens? You need to worry about how are you going to deal with that in your relationship with your boyfriend or girlfriend? How are you going to deal with that with your parents? How are you going to deal with that with your life? How are you going to deal with that with God? How are you going to deal with that? So you have some choices to make. Do you want to experience problems that are written in red? Or do you want to experience problems that are written in blue? It's your decision to make. This is why we gather our facts. You can look at the facts very clearly. And is there anything up here we didn't write down? Is there anything else you have to worry about if you're sexually active as a teenager? Anything we missed that I should include? What do you think? They might get married because they're so anxious to have sex. And so do you think that having sex before you're married solves that problem? Probably not, huh? I think the concern is that if you don't have sex before you're married, that you're going to rush into getting married, and that'll be something you regret later. You say, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have made this terrible mistake, this permanent mistake. One of the things that I've learned with the kids that I work with is that the kids who are able to make the decision to wait to have sex are kids who can wait for things. They've made this decision that this is something that's important, this is something that counts, and they're looking at the long view. Once you establish the ability to look at the long view, you're very unlikely to make short-term mistakes. And that's kind of the mistake that, if you're kind of in a rush and you want to be having sex and you think, well, getting married is the way to have sex, then actually your decision wasn't truly for chastity. And that's what we're talking about. Your decision was just sort of to get to be sexually active as fast as you can. Let me give you a few little hints about adult sex. When you're married, you can have sex whenever you want, right? Unless the kids are around. The most recent survey about sex lives with adults in America told us that the people with the happiest sex lives, who enjoy their sex the most, who have the most sex, who have the most fun, are Christians who've been married at least 10 years. Okay. Now, the good news is that really shows us, first of all, the benefit of waiting. Second of all, the benefit of longevity. You're having more fun having sex when you've been married for 12 years than when you've been married for 1 year. Right? That tells us something. As you get to know your partner, as you get involved in true intimacy isn't just what you do with your bodies. True intimacy is what you do with your life. True intimacy can only occur when you're committed to each other, when you know it's permanent, when you're going to work the troubles out to make your marriage last. True intimacy can only occur when you've worked troubles out to make your marriage last. True intimacy happens with conversation first, with your heart second, with your bodies last. And when you're married, you get to that third step. I am not asking you to practice abstinence. I'm asking you to practice chastity. It's a very different way of thinking. Abstinence means that you give something up. It means that you could have sex on Friday night and you decide not to. You abstain. You're abstinent. Right? I'm not actually asking you to give something up. I'm asking you to reach for something more. I'm asking you not to settle for what's going to feel good for 5 minutes and give you trouble for the rest of your life. I'm asking you not to settle for something that's short-term that you'll end up regretting. I'm asking you not to settle for a decision that sells you and your life short. Chastity isn't what Mary Ronan asks of you. Chastity is what God asks of you. And he asks this of you in a very strong way. We are told that it is a sin to have sex with someone we're not married to. That's a commandment. Do not have sex with someone you're not married to. It's a sin. Now, let's think for a minute about who's telling us it's a sin. First of all, sin, in its broad sense, is when we know God doesn't want us to do something and we do it anyways. That's a sin, okay? We know he doesn't want us to do it and we say, okay, God, I know this isn't what you want for me, but I'm going to do it anyways, right? Whether it's telling a lie, whether it's dishonoring your parents, whether it's having sex with your girlfriend or boyfriend, it's a sin. God uses sin to warn us about the things that are most harmful. Who is God to us? He's our creator. We wouldn't exist without him. We wouldn't be here in this room today if it wasn't God's design. He created us. He made us in his image. Not in anybody else's image, but in his. God is our Savior. Jesus Christ died on the cross so that when you die and when I die, we can go to heaven. Without that happening, we could not have eternal life in heaven. If Jesus wasn't willing to lay his life down for us, he is our Savior. He knows how many hairs you have on your head today. He has your name written on the palms of his hands, and he hung from those hands for you. He says to us, "For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." That's who God is to us. Now, if we think about who God is, and we think about what happens when we're sexually active, why do you think God made it a sin for us to have sex outside of marriage? What do you think? He wants to protect us. And who does he have to protect us from? Okay. He has to protect us from getting children, right? Yeah. But there's someone he has to protect us from. Ourselves. God has to protect us from ourselves. He knows our weaknesses. He knows we're tempted. He knows what we want to do. Frankly, he gave us the parts to do it. He made it feel so good. That's a gift to him, from him to us. He gave us this gift. He knows that we want to do it, and he still says to us, save it for when it's important. Save it for when you can have true intimacy. Save it for when the results of being that intimate are a good thing in your life instead of a bad thing in your life. Our sexuality is a gift. It's a gift. A God-given gift because he loves us so much. God's job is creation. God's job is new life. And he loves all of us enough to allow us to participate in that job of his, that miracle of his, through intercourse. We can work with God for new life because of the gift he gave us through the way our bodies work. Now, let's think about that for a minute. I want you to imagine that you have someone you really care about, and there's a big birthday coming up for them. And this is someone that's real important to you. You are crazy about this person, and you want them to know how much they mean to you with the birthday gift you're going to give them. So you think and think and think, and for months, what can you get this person? What can you get this person? And as you're thinking about this person and all the things they enjoy, you think, well, this is someone who loves music and is always on the go. So you decide to get your friend one of those little portable CD players. And it's expensive, so you have to save your money. So you go to the store, you pick out a CD player you'd like, and you start saving your money for your friend. You're putting the money away, and each time you save the money for your friend, you imagine them using this CD player, listening to their favorite music, being out and about. You just think of how they're going to use this wonderful gift. So the day of the birthday comes, and you go to the party, and they have a lot of people at the party. They are getting a lot of presents. And it's time for present opening, and your friend sits down and in their seat, and they have these big piles of presents all around on the floor, and you see yours in the pile, and you're kind of excited. You're waiting for them to get to your present. So they start opening their presents, and, oh, you like all those presents and everything, but you know your present is the best, and you keep waiting for your present to come up in the pile, and you're thinking, oh, it's getting closer, and their pile of open presents gets larger and larger around their seat, and they come to your gift. You are so excited about this. And they open your present, and they say, oh, I love this. Thank you so much for thinking of me with this terrific gift. I'm so, so happy. And they put your gift on the floor with the others. Your gift happens to be in front, but it's on the floor with the rest of the others. So they open the rest of their presents, and you're so happy. Oh, they love my present. Everything's so good. And they open all the rest of their presents up, and your gift is on the floor. And they say, oh, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. And they get up from their seat, and they step on your gift. You are mad about this, aren't you? How mad are you? You guys mad? You don't care? Yeah? You thought this was a perfect gift. You saved up your money. You imagined them using this. This was a gift of great value, and with that single act, your friend turned that gift into something worthless, of no value at all. Now, let's imagine a little bit about God. God was creating man, and he was creating us in his image, and he was creating us with great love. He was thinking about what would be the greatest gift that he could give us. And in God's perspective, one of the greatest gifts would be that we could share with him in the creation of new life. And he thought about this. He picked this gift. We didn't just randomly end up with our reproductive tracts. God designed it that way. He picked a gift in his eyes of great value. What do we do to that gift when we use it in a way he doesn't want us to? What do you think?
It's kind of like stepping on the CD player.
It's kind of like stepping on the CD player. That's right. You have something of tremendous value to you. It's your choice what to do with that gift. Once you gave that CD player to your friend, they could do anything they wanted with it. They could listen to music or they could step on it. Whatever their preference is, you gave the gift. God's done the same for us. He's given us the gift. We can do anything we want with it. Anything. And what I want you to think about is, what are you going to do? Did he intend for this gift in your life to be making babies you can't take care of? Did he intend for this gift in your life to give you a disease that will end your life? I don't think so. I think he intends for this gift in our life to draw us closer to him, to help us share in the miracle of life, to help us go from being single to being a couple to being a family, just the way He designed it. And the choice is completely and totally yours. Now, we talked about a lot of things this morning. You have a lot in your brains that you need to work through. This decision is one for you to make, and I will stress again, it's one to make now, this week, before any more time goes by. And there's a couple of things I would like you to do that would help you with this decision. I'm going to ask each of you this week to pray. And I'm going to ask you to pray for yourself. I want you to pray in a conversation with God. And I want you to do it every day until you know for sure what your answer about this question is going to be. Talk to God about where you think you're strong. What are you good at? What strengths has He given you? Talk to God about where you think you're weak. If you're one of those kids that you know every time you go to a party, every time you have a new girlfriend or boyfriend, you're going to be one of those kids that's looking to have sex, mention that to God. Let Him know that's what's on your mind. Talk to Him in conversation about your dreams, your goals, your desires. What do you hope for your future? And spend a little bit of time just listening. How do you listen to God? You talk to Him, and then you sit quietly and prayerfully, and you wait. If you set aside 15 minutes every day this week about this decision, you will be able to come to it before you get to the end of the week. When the weekend comes and you've done your praying, one of the things I hope you'll all do is go to church over the weekend. Have a visit in church. Go to God's house. Tell Him what you've decided. Say, God, thank you for this gift of sexuality. I've decided to be chaste. I've decided to practice chastity. You say to God, thank you, God, for this gift of sexuality. I've decided to use it my way instead of yours. Admit it if that's what you're going to do. If you choose to practice chastity, what you're choosing is to refrain from physical intimacy outside of marriage. You're choosing to wait until a permanent relationship to have that level of physical closeness that would include taking your clothes off in any way, shape, or form. Okay? You want to know where to draw the line? You draw the line with your clothes on. That's where chastity is. That means probably kissing's okay, but not yet. I don't think you ought to be kissing for another couple of years. Yeah, I'm sorry. I think you ought to wait to be kissing. The sooner you start kissing, the sooner you get to the place where you have to be making these other decisions. When I see parents tonight, I'm going to tell them they should have a rule where you're not allowed to date till you're 16. Yeah. I'm going to tell parents that tonight. And that's all part of your plan of practicing chastity. What we want from each other is closeness. What we desire is to be together with someone else, to feel connected with someone else. And a person who chooses to practice chastity gets that connection through conversation, through compassion, through caring for each other, through listening to one another, for doing something nice for them without expecting something in return for you. Chastity is a one-time choice that you make this week to refrain from any sexual activity outside of marriage. I'd like you to pray about that. I'd like you to think about that. And I'd like you to be very sure that you tell God your choice this weekend. Okay? So we're back, and we're continuing to talk about making decisions in relationships. And so far today, what we've talked about are some of the consequences you might experience in your relationships. First, we talked about the consequences you might experience if you're choosing to wait to be sexually active, and we talked about the pressure and maybe a little regret and maybe not being quite sure how to express this to your boyfriends or to your girlfriends. We talked about the worry about breakup, but we know you have to worry more about breaking up if you're having sex than if you're not having sex. We talked about the problems you might face if you're choosing to become sexually active. All the different sexually transmitted diseases, HPV and chlamydia, genital herpes, HIV, syphilis, gonorrhea, hepatitis, pubic lice. We talked about the problems that you might have to face if you're choosing to be sexually active and you become pregnant, and all of the issues with your family, with your friends, with your money, with your economics, with God to have to address your sinful choice with. So we've been looking at some of the consequences in relationships, but now let's talk about the relationship themselves. One of the things that is just at minimal required of a sexual relationship is a relationship. That's the second half of that term, sexual relationship. So let's step away from the sex part of it and do some thinking about relationships in their entirety. And the first thing that I want you to do for me today is to tell me, we're going to make two lists. We're going to make a list of good qualities in a relationship, and we're going to make a list of bad qualities in a relationship. And what I want you to think about is not necessarily, you don't have to think about boyfriend and girlfriend types of relationships. Think about your best friends. Think about your family members. Think about the people that are closest to you and most important to you. What are the good qualities of those relationships? And then think about relationships that, boy, they've just never gone right, and you just haven't been able to make it happen. Let's talk about what some of the bad qualities are in that. And you can tell me either way, good or bad. Just raise your hand and let me know if it goes on our good list or if it goes on our bad list. And who wants to get started? Good or bad qualities of a relationship. What do you think?
Overpower.
Overpowering. And does that go on the good or the bad side?
Bad.
Okay. So if you overpower someone else. Very good. Okay.
You can talk and they understand.
So you can talk and you can have understanding. Very important. Okay. Did you have one? You want to? What one do you have?
Trust.
Trust. What side does that go on? Good. Trust goes on the good side. Okay. Honesty. That's a good one too. That goes on the good side also. Honesty. Okay.
A problem that some people might have is their boyfriend's cheating on them.
Okay. Cheating. That always breaks our hearts, doesn't it? Even when your friend, who you think is your best friend, goes and has fun with somebody else, it hurts a little bit.
Shared interests.
Shared interests. That would be a good quality. Good, yeah. Oh, I almost wrote it in red. Shared interest. That always helps to get a relationship started, for sure. All the way in the back.
Communication.
Communication. Communication is two things, isn't it? Talking is part of it. What's the other part of communication? Who said it over here?
Listening.
Listening, right. So communication goes two ways. We can talk up a storm, but if we're never willing to listen to somebody else, that really doesn't work as well for us, does it? What do you think?
Lust.
Lust.
That would go on the bad.
Okay. Right, we're going to put lust on the bad side. Okay. And I'm going to clarify that, because lust is something that's only about you. It's not about the person you're with. It's just about what you want. And that's not what's desirable in a relationship, is just focusing on yourself. What do you think?
To care for each other.
To care, to have interest in one another, compassion for one another. Is that where you're going with that? Okay. So, boy, you guys really have a good list here. Okay. Let's see who I haven't called on yet. Yeah.
Gossip.
Gossip. That would be a bad thing, wouldn't it? Yeah. Okay. Lying would be a bad thing. Very good. Lying's always, always a problem.
Jealousy with friends.
Jealousy, would that be a bad thing? Jealousy, okay. You guys have a great list.
Any kind of abuse.
Or verbal or emotional or any of that, okay. Abuse. Okay. Reliability. Ooh, I like that. That's a good one, right? Reliability. Okay. Ooh, I wrote it in red. Reliability. Okay.
Respect.
Respect. That's a good one. Can I ask you a hard question about that, though? How do you know if someone respects you?
Because they won't put pressure on you.
Okay. So if you're in a relationship where there is respect, they don't put pressure on you. Is that right? So if you're in a relationship where you're feeling pressure from the other person to do something you don't think is right, would you say that's a lack of respect? I think so, too. Very good. Okay. What else have we got?
It might interfere with your work.
Say that slow and loud for me.
It might interfere with your work.
If it's bad, a bad relationship. So it distracts you from the things you need to be doing? You're worried more about the relationship than about your responsibilities? Okay. Okay, let's see if we can take two more. Betrayal. That's got to go on the bad side, right? Okay. Okay. One more from someone I haven't called on yet.
Pressure.
Pressure. And would that go on the bad side also? Okay. You guys have a great list. Let's see what we've come up with here. These are hints that you're in a relationship that isn't going the way it should. If you're betrayed, if one partner is overpowering another, if you're cheated on, if you feel pressure, if there's lust, if you're talking about someone or they're talking about you. And this is something, this happens when we're talking about sexual relationships. In high schools that I go to, one of the things that everybody tells me is that everyone knows who's having sex and who isn't having sex. It's a common knowledge in high school. Well, that means that the two people that are having sex with each other are talking about it. That's gossip. Okay? That's not private. That's not keeping it close. That's gossip. So to gossip about someone is always harmful. The only way any of us want to be talked about is nicely, right? If someone's going to talk about us, we want them to say, oh, she's so nice, he's so good, they're such good friends, they know how to treat people. You don't want people saying, hey, you know, she gave it over to me last night. That isn't the kind of talking that we're wanting. We want uplifting talk and caring talk for each other. Lying is always a problem. You get into the trust issue with lying, definitely. Jealousy, very good point. Some places I go, we get into a little debate about does jealousy go on the good side or the bad side. Some kids sometimes think that if their boyfriend or their girlfriend is acting jealous of them, that's how they're showing them they love them. But I want to tell you, that's never how you show someone you love them. Jealousy is control. If you say to someone, you can't talk to them because it's going to make me upset, you're trying to control that other person's behavior. Jealousy is not about love. Jealousy is about control. If you have a good relationship where you have trust and all these good things, there isn't a need for jealousy because the trust is there. Your boyfriend or your girlfriend could talk to somebody else and you wouldn't feel threatened. They could spend time with somebody else and you wouldn't feel threatened. So jealousy is definitely harmful. Abuse, and we were careful to talk about physical, Emotional, verbal abuse. Someone doesn't have to hit you with their fists to harm you. Sometimes words can harm us in an even worse way. And if the relationship is such that it's on your mind all the time, you're always having trouble, you're always fighting and not getting along, you can't concentrate on your schoolwork, you can't concentrate on getting things done, you know you're not in a relationship that's healthy for you, that's good for you. Now, on the good side, we want someone we can count on. That's really important, that you can count on a person. You need to be sure someone respects you, and you know how someone respects you by how they treat you. We want them to understand us. Let me ask you a question about trust. How do you know you can trust someone? How do you know that? Any ideas? What do you think?
You know you can trust someone when they trust you.
They trust you. So someone trusting you tells you that you can also trust them. Okay. What else?
They won't lie to you.
They won't lie to you. And do you know that about someone right away, that they won't lie to you? Yeah. No. You think you know it right away? You think it takes a while to get to know them a little bit? What do you think? Depends on the person. Okay. What do you think?
It's when you feel that you can tell them anything.
You can tell them anything. Okay. Now, what we're using a lot of how we're using phrases about how we feel. That's how we know if we can trust someone. We feel if we can trust them. If they trust us, then we ought to automatically trust them. Right? If we think they won't lie to us, we might know that right away. I want to caution you about this. Trust takes time. Trust takes a lot of time. And what you want to know about someone, if you're looking for a good relationship, you want to know that you can trust them in the small things as well as in the big things. So you need to pay attention to each other. And this is one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of dating until you're 16 years old or so. What I like you to do is to have fun with each other. Go out in groups of kids together rather than going out on dates. Because what you get when you go out in groups is you get to see who you can trust. We are inclined to trust everyone. And it's not that people aren't trustworthy in general, but we need to be very careful who we trust with our hearts and with our lives. Now, do you think if someone lies to their parents, they'll always tell you the truth? Right? No, they won't. If someone is able to lie to the people that feed them, that house them, that clothe them, if someone can sit across the dinner table from the people that actually take care of them and lie to them straight in the face, why should they tell you the truth? There's no reason you should trust them. If someone comes into school and they're never prepared with their homework and they always want to be copying somebody else's answers, should you trust that person? No, they're not trustworthy. They're cheating in school. So you have to be sure that the people you're willing to give your heart to are someone you could trust in the small things. We want to trust someone we feel strongly for. We want to trust them. Our feelings don't make someone else trustworthy. That's how we feel. The only way we know we can trust someone is by observing them, and by observing them in the small things as well as in the big things. Now, kids say to me, well, everyone lies to their parents. I don't think that's a good answer. I don't think you should be lying to your parents. And I think if you're going to lie to your parents, you'll lie to other people too. Now, will you stop lying to your parents eventually? Yes, you will. But should you be trying to be honest with your parents? Yes, you should. You should be trying to be honest with your parents, especially now. These next 4 years, your parents can be your best friends or your worst enemies. And guess who decides that? You, not the parents. Okay? You decide. Are you going to talk to them? Are you going to include them in things? Are you going to bring these things into your relationship at home to practice these things for your relationships later on in life? And trust is really key. Honesty is a big part of trust. Shared interest. If we're talking certainly about romance and relationships, you really want to have something you like to do together. It helps a lot if there's something that you enjoy. Communication is both talking and listening. Compassion for each other and caring for each other. You guys came up with a really great list. And the list is pretty universal. if I take you, I think you came up with more things than most of the places I go to. But if I were to take this anywhere, any country, if I could speak their language, and we made a list about what makes relationships good and what makes relationships not so good, this is what our list would look like everywhere. It's what one human being needs to connect well with another. Now, I want to tell you a little story. There was a man a very long time ago, about 2,000 years ago, and he had a job where what he did was work for God. God was his direct boss. He was directly responsible to God. And his job was to travel around. And he traveled around the whole Middle East, and his job was to establish the church, was to build churches in communities. So he'd go into towns, and he would spend time in a town. He'd stay in houses with people, eat dinner with them, get to know everybody, bring together all the people in the town that believed in God, and establish the church. And when he left these towns, he worried greatly about his friends that he loved so much that he left behind. So he wrote them letters. And we read his letters out of Scripture in the Bible. Does anyone have an idea who I might be talking about? Who am I talking about?
Jesus.
No, not talking about someone near and dear to Jesus, but not Jesus. Yeah?
Paul.
Paul, exactly. The Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul, we hear his letters. He wrote letters to the Romans and letters to the Corinthians and letters to the Galatians. And all of those people he wrote letters to were his friends. These were people he cared about. And when you're listening to the gospel message from Paul, you're listening to this message, one of the things you're going to notice is that it seemed like his friends' biggest troubles were in getting along with each other. He wrote to his friends to tell them how to treat each other to get along. Now, he wrote these letters 2,000 years ago, and I'm going to read you part of one of his letters now. And while I'm reading this letter, I want you to think about this list that you kids of the 21st century came up with. I want you to think about your list, and then I want you to hear Paul's list, because he has a list just like this. Okay. And he's going to tell us about love. And he says that love suffers long. That means love is patient. It waits for things. It doesn't rush. It doesn't put pressure on. Love is kind. Don't we all want people to be kind to us? Don't we like it better when someone's kind than when they're harsh? Love is not jealous. You guys knew that right away. It doesn't parade itself. That's the talking about it. Okay? If it's love, you're not going to leave your house and go talk about what you did together. That's another little nice thing about being married. Husbands and wives don't discuss their sex lives with their friends. Boyfriends and girlfriends do, but husbands and wives don't. They keep it private. They don't let this happen. It is not puffed up. That means love isn't a situation where I'm going to think I'm better than you. Right? That's a bad thing in a relationship. You wouldn't want that. Love isn't rude. It doesn't rejoice in inequality, but it rejoices in the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. 2,000 years ago, Paul told us the same thing that you guys are telling us today. What matters in our hearts is how we treat each other, and that has never changed. The same way God's wishes for us have never changed. It's easy for us in the year 2000 to think, well, you know, God made those rules for a long time ago. They don't count today. But they count today, because how we treat one another, how we care about one another, is all that matters in our daily lives. It's our greatest source of happiness, and it's our greatest source of sorrow. So, if you become sexually active, which side of the list enters into your relationship? What do you think? It's easy. It's a lot easier to be jealous when you're having sex than when you're not, isn't it? It's a lot you're a lot more tempted to lie about something if you're feeling under pressure. Sex means one person's putting a little pressure on another if you're not married yet. The bad side is the us side. It's our human self. How many of us haven't been tempted not to tell the truth? How many of us haven't been tempted not to be trustworthy? How many of us haven't been tempted to throw a fit because we want it our way, not your way? That's ourselves. That's our humanness. What Paul is asking us and what God is asking us is that we invite him in. That last 3 words I read to you were love never fails. How many of you know of someone who's been in love and it's failed? Raise your hand. They've been in love and it failed. Yeah, I know somebody like that. Okay. Lots of us. Does love fail because God makes a mistake? Love fails because we make a mistake. We, little humans that we are, aren't capable of all this perfectness all the time. We make mistakes. We do things we shouldn't do to each other. Those are our human weaknesses. If we want relationships in our life where love doesn't fail, where that continues and goes on and on and on, we have to invite God into that relationship because he is the only one that can make it possible. Daily life is hard. And when you're married, you think every day you're going to wake up and feel madly in love? It isn't going to happen. Right? There's days where you didn't get to bed till midnight the night before, and the baby cried all night long, and you poked each other all night. It's your turn for the baby. It's your turn for the baby. It's your turn for the baby. And you wake up in the morning, and you look around your bedroom, and there's piles of dirty clothes all over the floor. The baby's dirty clothes. You haven't got a wink of sleep. Your husband has bad breath. Your hair's sticking straight up. Love is not what you feel. Not at all. But love is your commitment to make it through that day. And we can't do that ourselves. Love is the commitment when you stand at the altar of your marriage and you say, I do, no matter what. That means even on those mornings where I don't feel love, I will act loving. That's not humanly possible. We need to invite God in to help that to happen. If we are not married and we're sexually active, have we invited God into our relationship? We've shut the door on him. We've actually said, God, stay out of my relationship. I want to do what I want. I don't want to do what you want. We can't have this. But if we're married, we can invite him in. When we're single, we can invite God in and ask him for this stuff and ask him for the strength and the courage not to have sex, so that we have to disinvite him, because he's the only one that can make this possible. Now, one of the things you can do when you get, oh, go ahead, you have a question?
What about the people who, like, if a boy and a girl fall in love, but one of them is prevented from marrying the other because of religion?
That's a tough one, isn't it? Well, I'll tell you what we fall down to. The question was, what happens if a boy and a girl falls in love, and they're of 2 different religions, and the parents say, you can't get married? Okay? What commandment do we have to fall back on if that's our situation? What do you think? Honor your mother and father. Exactly. That honor your mother and father, that really is what we're called to. We learn how to honor God by honoring our parents. So our parents may tell, they may tell us not to do things we want to do, like don't drink before you're of age. The thing about marrying someone that has a similar belief to you, it makes it much nicer to be a believer when the person you share your life with shares your beliefs. I am not going to say no one should marry anyone outside of their faith, but one of the things our faith helps us to do is construct who we are and what we believe in. And if you're going to marry and have children, it really does make it simpler to share your faith. So this is I want you to be thinking positively about your relationships, not just negatively about your relationships. You're trying to grow this love and this trust, and you do that from sharing time with each other, talking to one another, being caring for each other. And when you go back to school this week, what I'd like you to do is, if you have a chance in school, get together and see how big a list you can make of ways to show your affection without having sex. Okay? I've had kids make a list of 170 things in 15 minutes, and they all have to free you from temptation and allow you to be together in a way that is nice to be a couple, but where you wouldn't be tempted to have sex. And see how big a list you can come up with this week when you get back to school. Okay? This last half an hour, we're going to be reading your questions out of the basket and answering them out loud. I expect that some of the questions in the basket will be repeats, because frequently 8th graders have a lot of the same kinds of questions, and I'm going to answer as many questions as I possibly can. Now, some of the questions might make you feel a little squirmy, okay? Try just to bear with it and listen to the questions and listen to the answers, and hopefully you'll have a lot of new knowledge as you depart here today. Okay. Oh, I picked a good one to start with here, okay? What's an orgasm is the very first question that we have. And, you know, let me just give you a little tip. If you can be quiet when I read the questions, then we can get through more questions. If there's a lot of laughter and carrying on at the questions, then we'll use a lot of time that I won't be able to get to your questions. An orgasm is a physical experience that occurs as the result of stimulation of nerves that are attached to muscles in your genital area. Men and women both have this experience, although it serves two very different purposes. When a man experiences an orgasm, the nerves are tied in directly to the muscles that are in his pelvic floor. As the nerves are stimulated, these muscles start to contract, and the contracting of the muscles draws the sperm up and out of his testicles to propel his sperm and the semen out of his body. When a woman has an orgasm and the nerves that are stimulated are tied into her pelvic floor, when those nerves reach the point of stimulation that those muscles start to contract, her muscle contractions draw the semen and the sperm up inside her body. So the sensation that you have actually has a purpose. The purpose is for the sperm to leave the man and enter into the woman in such a way so that it can efficiently and effectively fertilize the egg. There is a very powerful feeling that goes along with this. When this happens for men, they are all done. They need to rest. Usually 20 to 30 minutes, they need to rest. They'll lose their erection, and they need to wait for their erection to return. When this happens for women, they don't have to rest. It doesn't mean the end for women, but it does mean now a little rest time for the man. What does it mean to be horny? That's a statement that's a word that's used that is actually, I consider that statement to be fairly disrespectful. One of the gifts, part of the gift that we have of our sexuality is desire. And that means that this person that you love, your husband or your wife, is someone you want to be as physically close with as possible. When you use horny instead of desire, you take sex from the wonderful, good, and positive gift it was meant to be, and you turn it into something that's a little cheap and a little dirty. And that really isn't how sex was designed to be. Okay? Okay, I'm going to give some, there's other questions on here, but I know they'll come up again. How long do the testicles stay that big? I knew that question would be in here. You need to be treated with antibiotics. You should start to experience some decrease in size in 24 to 36 hours. You should be back to your regular size in about 10 days. But it's a long 10 days. And what in my household, this would not be a reason for missing school. You would have to go to school anyway. So that's, yeah. Okay. This question wonders if I ever caught my parents having sex. And I would have to say no, especially since my parents are here. I would have to say definitely no. Okay. What are the precautions necessary in order for a husband and wife to have babies safely? The first precaution is already taken care of in this question. You're a husband and a wife. That's the first thing. That's the most important thing about having a baby, is that you're going to bring your baby into a family that has a mother and a father. Babies benefit from having both parents in their lives. Parents benefit from having both parents in their lives. If you are married, if you are choosing to wait to be sexually active till you're married, and you marry someone who made that same choice, you have no worry about sexually transmitted disease at all, ever, in your whole entire life. Okay? If you wait till you're married, and your partner waits till they're married, and you marry each other, and then you enter into this level of intimacy, that's when you never have to worry. You don't have old boyfriends and girlfriends haunting you in your mind. You don't have the potential of diseases you caught in the past haunting you in your mind. What you just have is the pure love of the two of you, trying to make it through, making a marriage work, and making a nice family. That is the ultimate ingredient, is that you are a husband and a wife first. Can you get a disease from oral sex? Absolutely. Every single one of these sexually transmitted diseases is transmitted by oral sex. Oral sex is sex. It's called oral sex for a reason, okay? It is sex. We always, 100% of the time, have openings in our mouth around our teeth. If you brush your teeth, if you eat crackers or potato chips or hot food, if you floss, you always make openings in your mouth. These germs, all they care about is an opening. That's all they need, is a way to get in. And your mouth is just as good a way for them to get in as any other way. If your mouth is on somebody else's genitals and they have a sexually transmitted disease, you are going to catch it. And let me just show you. I want to give you a little graphic representation of how easy these diseases are to catch. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to look at the board here. And I came here today with a very specific request for each and every one of you. It's not Mary Ronan's specific request for you. This is God's specific request for you. And his request is that you wait until you're married to have sex. Now, what I know about every audience I see is that some of you are going to go ahead, and what I'm saying today makes perfect sense to you. You're so glad this is what you were planning on anyways, and now you just totally know, and you have total comfort with sticking with this decision. Others of you listened to what I said and said, oh, yeah, right, lady, I'm going to wait. I'm talking to you now. This is you, okay? Now, you've decided you're not going to wait till you're married. You're going to wait for the right person. I don't know how you pick that right person if it isn't someone you're married to. They're not the right person if they're willing to have sex with you before you're married. So this person who you think is the right person, kind of cute and kind of nice, comes along here. Now, you have a choice in every relationship that you have. You can say, there's something I'd like you to know about me. I'm a person who's waiting to have sex, and I'd like you to respect that. If you're not willing to say that, you have to say, have you ever had sex before? How many sex partners have you had? Do you have any sexually transmitted diseases? You decide which conversation is easier to have. The first conversation is about you. I've decided to wait. The second conversation is about them. Can I trust you? One of those is a lot nicer to have. So this person comes along, and you say, have you ever had sex before? And they say, oh, yes. I had one sex partner. They don't tell you about oral sex they had with someone else because they didn't think of that as sex. So this person has had 2 sex partners. That makes them half as sexually active as average. The average sexually active teenager will have 4 partners by the time they graduate from high school. The average teenager is not sexually active. But the average sexually active teenager will have 4 partners by the end of high school, so your partner is only half that. Now, we want to know what your risk is. So we're going to take a look at these people, and we're just going to give everybody just 2 other partners. Okay? We're not going to give anybody 4. Some of these people might only have had 1 other partner. Some of these people might have had 6 or 7. Okay? So we're going to sort of average that, give everybody 2 partners. And in order to find out what your risk is, we have to look at 5 generations of risk. Here's number 1. Here's number 2. We give each of these kids 2 other partners, and we get to number 3. When we give each of these kids 2 other partners, we get to number 4. But we have to look at 5, right? So we have to give each of these kids 2 other partners. Now, what this means is that when you have sex with this person the first time, it's as if you're having sex with all of these people, okay? And we know a couple things about this crowd. We know they're sexually active. So if they're sexually active, we know there's disease. We know 1 out of every 3 of these kids has HPV. Look at this, you guys. This is a disease that doesn't ever go away. This is the #1 cause of cervical cancer in our country today. And this is how many kids, look who's got it. Okay? This is your partner. HPV is spread through oral sex as well as through intercourse. Now we know that 1 out of every 4 of these kids has chlamydia. Chlamydia, oh, look at that, kid's got both of them. Chlamydia is the one that causes infertility. There's another one with both of them. And the infertility is permanent. Remember, this has no symptoms. Oh, it would be you, okay, if you had sex, all right? That's chlamydia. We know that 1 out of every 5 of these kids has genital herpes. Look at this. Okay? Look at this kid's got them all. Okay? That kid's got all of them. Okay? Now, if you look at this chart, you can see there's a lot of HPV circles. There's a lot of chlamydia circles. There's a lot of herpes circles. There's a few kids that don't have any circles at all. Okay? So what we know statistically, we could say you could maybe get away with it. Maybe. Maybe you could have sex with someone and not catch any disease. It's possible. How can you guarantee that you're going to be one of these kids? You can't say to God, God, I'm going to have sex. Please be sure I don't catch a disease, right? I don't think that's a fair favor to ask of him, right? How can you be sure? You can't. This is your decision-making place. Once you decide to have sex, you don't get to pick which kid on this board you are. That's it. You only get to decide whether or not you're going to be sexually active. And all of this, these can be oral sex partners or intercourse partners, and it would be the same results. Although not exactly the same. Let me correct that. If you catch HPV from oral sex, you get the warts in your throat and your mouth. If you catch chlamydia from oral sex, you get something that's called thrush, which gives you a thick yellow sore coating on your throat and inside your mouth. It's very painful. It's hard to eat. It's hard to swallow. And chlamydia gives you that if you catch that. If you catch genital herpes from oral sex, you're going to get the sores on your mouth and inside your mouth, and there'll be big cold sores. People get cold sores who don't have genital herpes, but genital herpes will also give you those as well. HIV, syphilis, since they attack your whole entire body, if you acquire them through oral sex, you're going to get sick the exact same way. It isn't going to change how you get sick, okay? So you want to really be careful about that. All right. Okay, I answered those already. Are you sore the day after you have sex? A woman who has not had sex before, when she first gets married and they're away on their honeymoon and they're having sex for the first time, she's going to have some soreness. For women, the very first time they have intercourse can be painful. Women have a little thin membrane over the opening of their vagina that's called the hymen. And when that hymen breaks, it feels a bit like a stabbing pain, and it bleeds a little. Not a lot, it bleeds just a little. Now, in the old days, all women had this until they had intercourse. Intercourse was the event that ruptured this hymen years ago. But for you modern girls, that's not as true anymore. Girls that are involved in sports, that are athletics, who do a lot of physical activity, it's possible that this little membrane may tear long before you ever have intercourse, and then you wouldn't have that tearing experience and the little bit of bleeding the first time you have sex. But for women, good sex for women takes place up here. Okay? Women are wired between their brains and their reproductive tracts with thousands of connections. So in order for a woman to have a good physical sexual experience, she has to have a good partner. She has to be in a good place with him in her mind. He has to be someone that she trusts, someone that's committed to her, someone that's going to look out for her and care for her, or she can't possibly have a great physical experience unless it's good going on in her mind. Now, you guys are a little bit different. You're wired up not from your brains to your reproductive tract, but you're wired up visually, your eyes to your reproductive tract. So for you, you can have more of an experience that's just physical, and it can work out okay for you. Women can't do that. They need to have the emotional component as well. It's the way that we're made. So any man in this room that someday wants to be a great lover, the first thing he has to do is be a faithful husband. And once you're a faithful husband, you can start on the path of really loving your wife well. When you're learning all of this, and it's your honeymoon, and you're just all starting out, you're probably going to be a little sore for a few days. It takes a little adjusting, too. But once you've adjusted, it's great. So you just have to wait till you've done the adjusting part of it. Okay? That's what I said. It's great. Yep. Okay. Can you still get certain diseases as an adult? Absolutely. Anyone who is sexually active with someone with a sexually transmitted disease can pick it up. There's a little difference between teenage girls and adult women. Women's bodies during puberty are somewhat different than women's bodies after puberty. And women are in puberty until really they're 21 or 22 years old. Women's bodies during puberty are more likely to experience the complications of HPV and chlamydia if you acquire them. You're more likely to experience infertility from chlamydia if you acquire it as a teenager. You're more likely to get cancer from HPV if you acquire it as a teenager than if you acquire it as an adult. But your risk of acquiring sexually transmitted disease the diseases don't care how old you are. They don't care where you live. They don't care who your parents are. They don't care anything about you except that you're having sex with someone who has the disease. That's the only thing that matters to them, is they can get into your body. Here's an average-sized penis question. There's always a few of those in there. And they're usually in boys' handwriting, I don't mind saying. Let me give you a little reassurance about this, guys. The first thing I want you, all you young men in this audience, to understand is that we don't care about the size of your penis. It's just not the most important piece of information to us, okay? You care much, much more about that than we care. That's something you guys give each other a hard time about starting about now, and you'll still be giving each other a hard time about it when you're 40. It doesn't change, all right? But that's not something that matters to women at all. We care much more about what kind of man you are than the package that you come in. But with that being said, the average male penis, well, that's the only kind there is, I guess. The average penis is 3 inches when it is in its non-erect state, and about 5.5 inches in its erect state. That's average, okay? Now, there's a question here related to homosexuality, so let me make a couple of points about that. We're talking about having sexual relationships outside of marriage. That's what our conversation is about. It's not about only heterosexual sexual relationships outside of marriage. It's about sexual relations outside of marriage, period. That is something that God does not desire for us in our lives. It doesn't matter if it's heterosexual sex or homosexual sex. Sex outside of marriage is sex outside of marriage, and it's what God doesn't want for us. If what you are is a homosexual, that means that who you are attracted to is someone that's the same sex as you. Who you are is always fine with God. He knows who you are. He loves you exactly as you are. Exactly as you are. But what you do with who you are is what counts. That's where we have to think through our decisions. God loves us. He even loves us when we sin. He loves us that much. But he desires his very best for us. And he knows his very best for us cannot be reached in a sexual relationship outside of marriage. And it doesn't matter who you're attracted to. It's that it's outside of where God says it should take place. Okay, is sperm yellow? No, it's not. Actually, what you're calling sperm is actually semen. What you see come out of your body is semen. The sperm is in the semen. You can't see the sperm. You can only see the milky, cloudy material that is the food that the sperm is in, and that's the semen. And that's kind of cloudy whitish color. Okay, it's not yellow. Okay, is watching porn a sin? Let's think about this. If God created for us to have intimacy between two people, if what God wanted is for you and someone else to be as close as you can possibly be with each other, if his intent of creating us sexually was for intimacy and unity and compassion, do you think porn fulfills his desires for us sexually? No, it doesn't. It's outside of his desires for us. Porn is a way that we take something beautiful and turn it into something cheap. Porn does that. So porn definitely is something. I know the temptations for you guys are terrible, you guys and girls. The internet's right there, everything. I mean, it's so easy. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you can watch it on TV. But that's something really to turn off. That's something you'll feel tempted by, and you can practice not giving into temptation. Okay, let's see what else we have in our little pile here. More penis questions. There's always a few of those. Okay. Is foreplay breaking chastity? Well, once you're underneath your clothes, you're breaking chastity. Okay? Once you're underneath your clothes. And the reason for that is because you're allowing yourself to give into your temptation thinking you'll be able to stop at some point. And it's so hard to stop, you guys. It's so hard. Once you get going and you've gotten to the point where you're feeling each other's bodies underneath your clothes, it's really hard to say, oh, excuse me, it's time for us to go, shoot some hoops. It isn't going to happen, all right? That isn't what's going to happen. So a good little rule of thumb is that never put your hands where somebody else's bathing suit belongs. okay? Never put your hands where somebody else's bathing suit belongs. And if you can stick with that, it will help. But really, you guys, we're asking you for something that's hard. It's difficult to do. And the closer you put yourself in temptation's way, the more difficult it is to live a chaste life. So to avoid things like being alone together for a lot of hours in the house, to avoid things like sneaking off where you know there aren't going to be any adults, to get into cars with each other when you're of driving age and know that you have the whole evening alone. These are the kinds of choices you want to avoid so that you don't get into a situation where the temptation is so great for you. Now, the Lord promises us no temptation has overtaken you except that which is common to man. So he tells us all of us are tempted. There isn't a person in this room that doesn't experience temptation on one way or another. But God is faithful. He will not allow you to be tempted more than you can bear. And with the temptation, he will help you find a way of escape. So, you find your way of escape by not putting yourself into temptation's place in the first place. When you find yourself in temptation's place, that's when you say, God, I really need your help. When we were growing up and we danced together, they told us we had to leave room for the Holy Spirit in between us. Okay? I'm going to give you a little bit of that same sort of thinking. One of the things that Jesus promises us is that he's with us always. He's with us always. That means when you and your boyfriend or you and your girlfriend are taking your clothes off, guess who else is there? Jesus is there. He's there, right with you, right then. Okay? Pay attention to that. Okay, is oral sex breaking chastity? You betcha, in a big way. Oral sex is breaking chastity. All right. How easy is it to get pregnant? It's very easy to get pregnant. If there is an egg in place in the tube and a woman has intercourse, pregnancy is likely to occur. As teenagers, you don't know when an egg is present or not. So you need to assume 100% of the time that there's an egg there, 100% of the time, if you have intercourse, pregnancy could occur. Okay. One of the questions is about the openings in the women. Women have 3 openings in their body and men have 2. Okay? The women's openings are the urethra, which is where she urinates from, and that's in the very front of her genital area. The vagina, which is the pathway directly into the uterus, which is in the middle. And the rectum, which is the pathway from the intestines to outside your body, which is in the back. Men don't have the middle one, okay? Men have the urethra, which is from the opening at the end of your penis, and the rectum. Women have the extra passageway for the baby. That's what the vagina is for, is the passageway for the baby. And that's also where intercourse takes place. Okay? At what age do I think someone should get pregnant? I don't think it's actually an age issue so much as it is a stage of life issue. That to be settled into a marriage, to be in a permanent, committed relationship, to be feeling like it's time to start your family, to be in agreement on this, that's ideal. That's ideal. That's ideal for the mother, that's ideal for the father, it's great for the baby. If, in a marriage, a pregnancy happens other than that, a marriage can usually absorb that. If it's you only wanted to have 4 babies and you're having 5, or if you weren't quite ready to have a baby and you start having a baby, a marriage can really accommodate that the way a single life really can't. So again, we go back to having the good husband and wife thing going on. Is masturbation a sin? Masturbation is outside of the way God desires us to be sexual. Okay? He gave us this gift of sexuality to be used with someone else, to bring this unity and sharing that we've talked about so much today. So masturbation doesn't do that. Masturbation is sex by yourself. Okay? That's what masturbation is. Now, I have no idea, I cannot even pretend for a minute that I understand what's in God's heart and God's mind. But I do know that God understands us and has great compassion for us. And if you're in a situation where you just want to be sure all the equipment works and you wonder how it feels, all right, that's one situation that I think God would have great compassion on. People want to know their equipment works and they wonder how it feels, okay? But if you're in a situation where you think about masturbation, where you use pornography for masturbation, where it's a part of your regular life in any way at all, then you are not fulfilling God's desire for you sexually. So let me give you a little, aside from that, a practical issue. In this country, in America, we have a lot of sexual dysfunction with married adults. A lot of people that really struggle with their sexual relationships, trying to have a nice sexual relationship and have all of that closeness. And there are some theories that in America, the way men learn about sex is through masturbation and pornography. And to learn about sex through masturbation, which only tells you what you like, okay, it doesn't tell you anything about a partner, it tells you what makes you feel good, or pornography, which also is, tells you what guys like. Pornography doesn't tell you what women like at all. It'll give you a very disturbed perspective about what women like. You're not going to get a clear idea of that. Then if that's how you learn about sex, then when you get to have a sexual relationship with a real woman, you don't actually know what to do for her because you've learned only what makes you feel good or what the porn stars do, and that's not very close to reality. So what you want to be able to do is learn how to talk to each other about things that are difficult. Learn how to talk about things that make you uncomfortable. Learn how to talk about things where you're sharing some of who you are with someone else. Not just with anybody, but as your relationship develops. The ability to talk to one another, the ability to express your desires, the ability to listen to someone else's desires are the things that will make you great at loving another person. Our sexual love is a very small part of who we are. The part of us that loves with our heart, the part of us that loves with our soul, the part of us that loves with our intelligence, and all our sense of humor, our sense of fun, that real and complete and total love is the love that God desires for each and every one of us. And we get to that love in steps. We learn first how to talk. We learn how to enjoy each other's company. We learn how to be with each other. We learn how to be respectful and honest and trustworthy and reliable. We make a commitment, and then we bring the sexual love in. You guys have been terrific. Thanks for a great day. It's time for me to let you go. Okay?